Okay, I guess we'll get started. We got everybody here who's going to be here. You want to go ahead and be recorded? Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I know the facilities committee meeting went just a little bit late. That's okay. We'll get an update from them hopefully. We'll go ahead and get started with the regular board meeting. Today is February 28, 2022, 6:30 p.m. Now 6:35, I guess. We're going to get started with a roll call. Call to order and roll call, please.
Johnson. Here. Moore. Absent. Mike Thomas. Mike Thomas.
He hasn't come into the next meeting yet.
Okay. Can you let me know what you did? Bob Thomas.
Here.
Sondel.
Here.
Berger.
Here.
Muscat.
Here. All right, so we do have 5 present, so we do have a quorum. I'd like to welcome all our visitors, and it's good to see the building principals. We don't get to see every meeting, so it's good to see you guys tonight. And looking forward to hearing from you. So with our public forum, if there's any visitors that would like to speak in the public forum, we'd like comments at this time for anything that has to do with anything you want to say at the river board meeting.
Hi, my name is Brendan Chula. I'm a father of 4 kids here in the district. I have a 2nd grader, kindergartner, and 2 kids in preschool here in town. Gonna have another girl here in about a month, so we'll have 5 in the district at some time. First of all, I just wanted to come here tonight and say thank you to some teachers and administrators that have made my family's transition back to Centerville really smooth. They put my kids' needs first with their hearing issues, and our kids love their teachers and administrators, and I see a few here tonight, Rhonda included with a lot of work she did. My number one goal is to always be centered around my kids, their needs, and making sure they get the same education opportunities I did when I was a big grade 20 years ago. With that being said, I want to communicate some other things I feel are important tonight. I was disappointed to see the board voted 4-3 to go into contract negotiations with Mr. Rubel. I feel that 1-year deal puts our entire district in a bind. What are we getting out of Mr. Rubel in a 1-year contract that we can't get out of another person? That person being a great candidate that we hire, or an intern that could come in.
I'm just going to interrupt you. I'm going to warn you and caution you that not to say anything disparaging about anybody. So you're kind of on the borderline there.
Okay, so you can stop me if you can. I think Raider could come in with a different viewpoint on things and take us in a different direction as a district. I think he had a nice run here as he was in the interim first, but I think it's time for him to move on. What is Tom Rubel going to do in 1 year that hasn't been done in the 5 or 6 years that he's been here already? I think that's an important question for you to ask yourself. Why is the board split on this decision? Probably surprised it wasn't 7-0. So I think somebody needs to explain what the deal is with that. There's so many students are open and enrolling into other districts, which has been talked about at board meetings in the past. It's hard to imagine being 100% in with the district and its constituents when you are not part of the community in which you serve, which includes both your time and financially paying taxes into our district. How many times are we going to extend a contract to him and get a lateral movement? Let's get a person that makes a difference. Let's find somebody that wants to be here long term. I want to see somebody enact goals that will better my kids' future, and frankly, a 1-year contract does the opposite. Instead of paying them for the same ideas, let's take a chance on some new ideas. If time is an issue with finding a candidate, we should use resources to find an interim that unites our district and our board that seems separated. We should start preparing to hire a search committee to find the best candidate for what Centerville School District needs for the next year. A 1-year contract may be all we can offer a candidate at this time, but it doesn't have to be to him. Let's get the best person for the job and not just hire out of necessity.
Hey, Brandon, I think we got the point. Mr. Rubel's in the room and this is the public meeting, so I think appreciate it in here, but
I don't mean to be out of order.
there's a certain decorum that I think we need to follow. So
Okay.
Thank you. Is there any other public comments? Okay. With that, we'll go on to approve the agenda for the regular business meeting. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the agenda. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Oh, Mike Thomas is here. All opposed? Okay, there's no old business. We'll go on with new business, and that is approving and adding special, excuse me, a Schedule D position for both boys and girls soccer coaches. So any discussion on, I don't know if Rich Parker's on, I don't see him on there, so.
Rich communicated to me that this is because of numbers in soccer.
A lot of kids up, okay.
And we have good numbers in both groups, and to be able to supervise adequately, we need to add a couple of coaches. They're currently not on the,
Okay. You know how many kids are now?
close to 30% both groups.
Hey, Rich, I'm gonna take my phone up to Tom. He said his internet was out, so
Okay.
he's on there. But
Is
he
it
can't get, yeah, but he can't get you on the internet phone.
Are you on speaker, Rich?
I am, yep.
Okay, just talk to us a little bit about those two coaches and the need for them, if you would. Speak loudly.
You bet. This year, the coaches have a lot more players than normal. Our boys, I believe, are up to 30 out for boys soccer. Our girls are at 24. And they used to use volunteers quite a bit, and those volunteers have left. So we feel the need for an assistant coach at both those levels with that many kids. It not only helps at practice, it's going to be a big help when it comes to transportation, because we are going to have to use Suburbans and get kind of creative with that this year. So that's really the gist of it.
Okay. I think that's great news, because I can tell you back in 2014, there were barely enough kids to fill a team on the boys team, because they were playing a lot of games with 10 players, so to have 30 kids out, I think is a pretty good deal.
I would agree.
So,
Thanks, Rich.
You bet. Sorry.
that's all right.
I move to approve adding Schedule D positions for soccer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve adding the Schedule D positions for both girls and boys soccer. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That's a yes from you, Mike?
Yes.
Come on, Tim's in, he must have left. All right, so that motion passes. The next one is,
Tim's on the.
oh, Tim's on there, okay. He ran over. All right, so approve the transportation bus leases. I did while you were in meeting this morning. I did call and talk to Tim to get a little clarification on this. So Tim can certainly chime up there, but this is going to be the 2 route buses and the 1 trip bus, and those are available. And if you got any questions, and they're all going to be diesel at this point, so we went from gas to diesel. It just keeps going back and forth, but I think you said that last week. So you didn't know you're right, but you're right. So, anyways, Tim, anything you want to add on that?
No, this is just the technical part of the lease. I mean, we went all over the numbers and
Okay.
actually came in a little cheaper than what we originally planned, but this will get us started on our next go around.
Okay. So this will be, we get at least these 3 buses moving. There's going to be, and what you told me, there's going to be 2 route buses, and one of them is going to be a trip bus that has air conditioning. So the reason you have a couple different quotes in there, one's going to be air conditioned with the luggage as a trip bus. So, any discussion or comments or questions on it for Tim?
I move to approve the transportation lease purchase agreement.
A second.
All right, so we have a motion, a second to approve the leases on the buses. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No? And that motion passes. Okay. Item C, approved personnel business procedures. We have quite a few in there, and then I know that there's some late add-ons. I saw the add-ons. So, does anybody have any questions or discussion on any of those items?
Yeah, I got, with the Emma resignation, she could make more money going to Union Hills. That kind of bothers me a little bit. I understand the money all that kind of good stuff, but a whole bunch of years ago, I looked to take a job at Indian Hills, and it would have been a $10,000 cut in salary. And the silly man I was talking to told me I should have come sooner. So I guess so I could have lost more money for a longer period of time. But then it's kind of interesting that it moved, if they've all moved ahead of us, I guess. I did not realize that.
Well, I don't know what the position she's taking over there is, so.
She explained to me the business aspects of kids enrolling.
It was a higher rate per hour, but it wasn't annual. It wasn't more annual.
Okay.
Any other discussion on it?
The other one, I need Lisa, when Shauna resigned, she wanted her pay for sick leave, flex leave. That's just when people retire, isn't it?
That is
So
correct.
she wouldn't get anything,
Yes,
not
that's right.
even flex pay?
No.
Okay, I just want, that's what I thought, I just wanted to get that in my head correctly. But how come those people don't know that when they write their letters of resignation?
It's in the master contract.
I reached out to her after that,
Oh, did you?
let her know.
Okay, good,
Lisa and Tom brought that to my attention, so I reached out to her.
okay,
And
good.
she's not working with us this year, remember, she's
Right,
taking a year
right.
off.
I'm with
So
you.
it's not like, usually we're close enough to be able to say, hey, can I take a look at it, you want me to help you, or have any questions?
Good point. Yes.
She's an excellent employee.
I move to approve personnel business procedures.
With all these add-ons, I take it, yep, okay. We have a motion
A second.
and a second to approve all the personnel business procedures. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No? And we'll just take my comments as a yes till we hear different. Okay. With that, that finishes up our regular business meeting for the evening. If we could have a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
A second.
Okay. Motion and a second. All in favor of adjourning this meeting signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. And then we'll go ahead and move into our work session with a call to order and roll call, please.
Johnson?
Here?
Moore, not here. Mike Thomas? Bob Thomas?
Here.
Shondell?
Here.
Berger?
Here.
Liskus?
Okay. Here. Again, this is time to welcome visitors in public forum if there's anything new and different that somebody would like to bring up in the public forum. Hearing none, if we can have a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, Mike. And all opposed, no? I think we got a unanimous on that one, so no opposed. All right, I'll turn it over to you for the student achievement.
We're
It
gonna,
be Rhonda, but go ahead.
Rhonda's here, and we're gonna present student achievement profile information. So Rhonda's gonna kick it off, give an overview of that, and then you'll hear from our respective building principals. So Rhonda?
Okay. Okay, what we're going to talk about tonight is what we call Iowa School Performance Profile. It's Iowa's, how we report out on data in the state of Iowa. Every school district, or every state, I should say, is required to have performance data that they report out at the state level. And Iowa has combined a couple of different reporting requirements. One is federal. Under the ESSA, every student succeeds at, which is what ESSA stands for. We have accountability scores, and this is the federal law. ESSA is what replaced No Child Left Behind, and so It's the federal law, and under that law, schools are given either a MET, targeted, or comprehensive designation. Once they're identified, the state of Iowa is then required to provide targeted or comprehensive services to those schools that have that designation. So, and I'll explain that a little deeper in a little bit. Then Iowa has what they call ratings. Some of you remember the old rating or ranking thing they used to do with the school districts in Iowa. It's similar to that. Now, based on these accountability scores, they align them with the ESSA laws, and so you have the labels everywhere from exceptional to priority, and there's data scores that designate what determines those. So then they have additional data that the state of Iowa keeps track of too, as far as things that help schools make decisions on their needs. So the difference between the ESSA and the Iowa is the accountability measures are the ones on the left here. Those are the ones that figure into those designations that schools received. The additional measures on the right, they started out a few years ago and there was 4 or 5, and they keep adding to them. They're up to 16 now, additional measures that the state collects data on and schools report out on. The attendance goes through our student information system, which is PowerSchool, and you see a whole list of stuff there that they run through this report. So when you look at interpreting the scores, this is how they come up with them. Each school, based on a weighting system, and Julie's going to explain the scores from a district level and what they each mean, how they get these scores is based on weighting and those different accountability measures. They put them all together and they come up with a composite score. So the state average is 54.7, and so then based on where the schools end up scoring is where they come up with their designation. So to get to be a targeted or comprehensive school, they look at the subgroups, the data for each school. The FRL stands for free and reduced lunch. IEPs are the individual education plans, and they look at the special education students with disability percentages, race and ethnicity, and then ELL stands for English language learners, and that's the 4 subgroups that the state. They also look at these other things and keep data on those, but those are the 4 subgroups that they look at the data to determine if you're a target or comprehensive school. So I'm going to click on what it looks like. If you type in Iowa School Performance Profile, you'll go to their website. And the website looks like this when you click on it. You can select by year, and it goes clear back to 2018. And you need to select year first. If you're going to go back a year, you need to select that first. And then you can go and you see here, there's all the school districts in Iowa are listed. And on the right there is the district that the school belongs to. So they're alphabetical by school. So to find Centerville, you would type in Centerville. And then it brings up all the buildings. Did I spell it wrong? It's moving slow on me.
Yeah, it was doing that earlier today too.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so then it'll bring up all the districts or all the school buildings in Centerville. If you were to search another district and they had more buildings, they would all be listed there. Okay, so this takes you to the main website or the main district page, and they give you the district summary, which is what you see here. Then you see they have the learning measures or those accountability measures. If you click on each one of them, it gives you specific detail about each one that you can learn more about how they came up with those. And like I said, Julie's going to share a little bit more of that. Same way with the additional matrix, they have those listed there and you can click on those according to the topic. For example, if you went to science, we test science 5, 8, and 11. And it would give you the comprehensive score there, the composite score for the district.
Are these based on standardized testing?
Yes, I'm sorry, Kevin, you're right. I should have mentioned at the beginning. We test in Iowa, the test is called the ISAP or Iowa School something. Anyway, it's the state assessment that we give. And that's where they pull those accountability scores from.
So everybody's being measured on the same.
Yes.
I would also add that at the high school level, they use ACT participation and ACT success.
Yeah, I guess I was just, if the state's measuring, they're measuring over the same standard.
Yes. And then Matt's gonna talk graduation rate too.
Yeah,
And that's-
4 and 5 year.
Yeah, and so some of that, those accountability things is pulled in through our state reporting, what they call the BEDS reports and stuff, so. So then it breaks it down, into grade level, and then you'll see these are the accountability, the free and reduced lunch, the students with disabilities, ethnicity. It'll give you gender too, and then, the 3 grade levels that are assessed for science. Okay. This is- Okay, here we go. All right. So then the first thing you see here is the demographics. It gives you the statistics for the breakdowns of those subgroups. Then as you go down through here, Julie's going to explain these, but when you look at these, the little triangles are the state average. Here's a list of all the accountability measures, and like Matt said, when you get down here, it gives you a lot of stuff for the secondary level. It's the post-secondary readiness stuff. At the bottom of the page, it'll give you all the schools. If you click on the school, it'll take you to their website or to the school's page that has the statistics for the school. It gives you the grade level, and here's where you see whether you're comprehensive or targeted status. Okay. We have 2 buildings that are targeted. It's on a 3-year cycle, and so we're on year 2. Remember, this would be our 3rd year, but when COVID hit, everything froze, and so all that data that year just stayed that data. And so we basically skipped a year because we didn't give assessments in 2020 because we were not in school. And so there is no data. So we're still on year 2, but, and then the overall rating based on all these scores together. Okay. Now then, this is messing me up. How do I get back to it, or Cameron, to, I can't see where the tab is.
Oh, just click and drag that bar.
Oh, I got it, I can move it, never mind, got it, okay. So Julie's gonna take over and talk about our district level data.
And then each of the principals will talk about the building level data. Preschool doesn't take any statewide assessments, so I didn't get to talk about that, so I'm gonna get to talk to you about this. This is a data look of the district. These are district scores from 2018 to 2021, and you can see that 2020 is blank due to we did not take any assessments, so there was no new data created there. The first one that is listed is the literacy average school achievement, and that is an average of the scale score for the students on that ISAPS, or that Iowa statewide assessment of student progress that Rhonda had mentioned, in the English language arts test. And so you can see that we were at 48 for that average score. Then the literacy proficient is students who are scoring that proficient score on that ISAPS testing. And you can see in 2018 we were at 75, 72, and then 65 in 2021. Growth is measured by the average student growth percentile score in the English language arts test. It's measured by using their percentile score and then describes the student's growth compared to other students with similar prior test scores, so their academic peers. So it's a little different. It's not totally their growth, it's compared to their peers. It also demonstrates a student's growth and academic progress even if she is not meeting the proficiency benchmark. So this is one we like to talk to kids about, because even if you're not proficient, we still want you to grow. And so as a district, you can see we are at 48, 59% on growth, and then 43. Then the same thing for math. The average math score is just like a literacy score, it's just the math test. Due to getting a new test, that is why we don't have data for 2018 and 2019. They had nothing to compare that average to. And then the same for math proficiency, you can see the scores there, and then math growth for the district. This is all district, and then the principals will go through and look at, their building data. One of the other parts to get that, score that we've been talking about, the performance profile score, is the conditions of learning data. And that is given to all students 3 through 12. And it's a measure that students take an online assessment survey type situation where they're given a question and then marked how they feel about that question. It's given to all public schools. Again, it's only 3 through 12. They don't let the littles take it because it is a little overwhelming even for 3rd through 6th grade. And then they use that data, and we at Lakeview get that data, but it is not 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades data is not used in the measure of the performance profile. We give it so that we have that information, but I think if you ever saw those questions, you would understand how kids of that level would have a hard time sometimes navigating those questions, but it is included in 6 through 12. And if you want to get more into it, like I said, there's an in-depth view on there that you can look and see specifically how each building went in the district as well. So when we look at how we got those, the district scores and overall how our district is doing, or at the elementary, middle, and high school level, you can see that these are the things that they use to measure and the weight that is used for each of them. So participation, I did not report those because at our district we have great participation. We make sure that all kids are tested as much as possible. And so we usually have anywhere from 96% to 100% who participate. So that is one measure in math and reading, so it's an overall weight of 10. And you will see that elementary and middle school are in one category, and then the high school is in another because there's additional things at the high school level.
So Julie, if I can,
Yeah.
so this 100% ties to the scores that Rhonda was going through, and where the mean is 54.7%. And exceptional, so the state basically says, here's 100%, but your exception was you're at 66%.
So it's like the average of that, right?
Right, it's an
Yeah,
average.
it's an average.
Yeah, but it's weighted, so to get the average for the school, so let's say take Lakeview for example. Lakeview would have scores for participation, proficiency, growth.
Right, no, I get that.
Okay, and then, but each one of those weights differently.
Differently, yeah, which you can see.
Yeah.
So the.
No, I get that.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah,
But when there's a 54%, we'd have to go back to the slide to look at it.
Okay.
It just seems to me that when there's a slide that showed targeted, then the average, state average is 54.7. That's
Right.
a 54.7 composite score based off of
are you
this.
thinking
That's the
this?
state average, 54.7.
Right, that's the one, 54.7.
Yeah.
That's off that 100% scale on that other slide.
Yeah, the state averages, they took all the districts and averaged them and got to 54.
So if exceptional is, and I'm assuming it's on some sort of bell curve when you put the state school districts across it. So it's 66.31 and above is in the very small portion of that bell curve. It seems like the state expectations are unrealistic.
So how they come up with this score on the right that you're looking at there, it's not the same every year, because what they do to get these scores is they start with the bottom 5%. So once they have their whole list of all 1,000 and some schools in the state of Iowa, then they take the bottom 5%, and those are designated as comprehensive, or the same would be priority or comprehensive. So that the bottom 5% is where they get what they call the GAP score, which is the 4395. And so when you look at anything with free and reduced lunch, those 4 categories, that special ed kids and minorities, all that, if your districts in any of those 4 categories, those scores of those kids are below the 4395, then you get a targeted or
I get that.
comprehensive.
I get
Yeah.
that.
And so those scores can change from year to year based on the averages of all the districts. So they take the bottom 5 and work their way up with percentages. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
I'm just saying the state average is a 54.7% on the scale of 100. That seems
Yeah.
like that bell curve should be, is too far in the middle, it should be skewed over. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a formula, and so,
It's a formula.
and the state has an answer, because I actually called or emailed and asked about this, because you can see that elementary and middle school conditions of learning survey is 10% of our weighted score. Well, for the middle school, that is absolutely correct, because she would have 6, 7, and 8 that would take that. But at Lakeview, they distribute that 10% over the other weights, because our 3, 4, 5 data is not used, like I said in the previous slide. Do you know, but we go ahead and take it.
I think I just figured out my math disconnect.
Okay,
I'm good.
okay.
It's very complex.
Yeah, but they're very good to have it, because Rhonda and I were working at this, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense, and they told us, so it made more sense to us. So it's all weighted and has its own formula. So you can see then also on the high school side, Matt will talk a little bit about the graduation rate and how you can see that that's 15% when you talk about those two. Post-secondary readiness has a couple different categories that they look at with ACT and performance and participation, things like that. So that's how they get their 100% totals. So these weights change and have changed throughout the years, and I think continue to change.
Right now,
They're
because
frozen.
of the COVID stuff.
COVID, but they are estimated to, some of these will change as they go. Sometimes conditions of learning is supposed to get higher, I believe, as the years go
I
on.
think it started at 5% and they keep increasing it because they're trying to let schools get used to taking it.
Yeah.
And questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me, I'm not capable of understanding the difference between proficiency and growth.
Okay. So
Because you said people can grow and not be proficient, that's the part I can't comprehend.
So proficiency is you make a 75, you're proficient. That is a random arbitrary number, so don't take me on that. But you have to hit a certain score to be proficient. But in growth, you can grow
I got you now, okay.
without hitting that proficiency. We want you to get proficient and grow, right? But, or we want you to be proficient and still keep growing. So growth is really important, but it is a good way to help kids see that they're improving. Yeah. Any other questions? This is just a quick breakdown of it, of how they get the scores that the principals are going to talk to you. Okay? So, Matt, you're up.
Okay. So what you'll see, I believe from all three buildings will be, 3 to 4 slides. First off, this is our school performance profile that was published this year for high school. So that's, as you can see, it's a 53.12. The ladies before shared how the breakdown in the state as to where a school would fall. So for Centerville High School, we fall in the acceptable range because our score is 53.12, which you can see is slightly below state average. The next slide, this is a comparison from the last three, from 2018, 2019. Of course, we have that gap in 2020, and then we go to 2021. And you can see we've had I'd say you can call it a steady decline in terms of the school performance profile score. Now, one thing that I have done, because when I see that, I'm like, I wonder how much we're like other people, at least in our area. And right or wrong, I like to compare to our conference schools. They tend to be somewhat similar. And, like when you look at the school performance profile between 2019 and 2021, as far as the high schools, 6 of the 7 schools declined in their school performance profile score. And only one school, I believe it was Clark, actually went up, and it was about 1 point. In terms of decline, it was Clark gained, then it was Eddyville, then it was us. The remaining 4 schools declined even more than we did, which, again, just looking at how other schools are performing in their area that are somewhat like us, though no schools are identical, and you could say it's an apples to oranges comparison, but it's one of the better comparisons we have. So you can see kind of that trend over the 3 years.
Do you know what the state average trend move is?
I don't know that off the top of my head. So I think, You know, if you look year after year at the different cut scores, I would have to assume that they're trending downward, but that's just a complete guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I don't know the answer to it. So going into, okay, I can see, it looks different on the screen here.
I know, it was messing me up.
Yeah, I'm messing up. So you can see, like Julie pointed out, our assessment participation throughout the school district is very, very good. So we had high rates of participation, higher than that of even the state average. And then we have the average achievement in English language arts, as well as average school achievement for mathematics. And you can see those are both below the state average. I do want to bring your attention to the conditions for learning composite, because you'll see that, that is significantly below state average, and this is another one of those where.
What does it mean? I mean, what is?
Okay, and I think, have we presented on conditions for learning before? I think that we
Yeah, but
have.
it's not, it's something we could.
Just real quick, couple sentences on what it is.
A couple sentences, it's basically a climate survey for the students. It talks about,
Okay.
do they feel safe in school? What are the student-to-student relationships
Yeah.
like, adult-student?
Emotional safety.
Yeah, actually, I have it.
Yeah,
right
I-
here.
5 of them.
Yeah,
I
not
know you guys
six,
have
actually.
presented on that
And
before.
you might have taken it as a parent too, because some parents are
Yeah, we
also.
So, well, you guys have presented before, I just didn't know that's what it's called.
So I guess the one thing I would say with that is, with all of these, this is what we might refer to in the education world as a summative assessment. It's kind of like after the fact, this is the measure of these things from the school for a given year. So kind of the output of the system. So we spend quite a bit of time looking at these numbers and trying to dive in and just gain a better understanding of our system so we can make adjustments. Conditions for learning is one of those. We're able to get a pretty detailed report back, and we go over that data as a staff, and we utilize it to make changes, if you will. Some of the things that we've done at the high school, we've implemented, and I know at the middle school and elementary, they're doing this as well, implementing a tier 1 social emotional learning curriculum during our advisory time, as well as, adult-student relationships, student-student relationships, doing things to support positive interactions throughout the school. It's something that we talk about consistently. Now, in terms of conditions for learning and the 6 parts of that, 5 out of the 6 we improved. So we were actually, even though that score is not where we like it to be, we were pleased that, when you look at the components of conditions for learning, 5 of the 6 areas we actually improved in. So, and we improved from the previous year to this year in terms of a composite score. So we were happy about that. We talked about graduation rate a little bit. I think we've even shared a metric, or at least I have a metric that goes all the way back to the mid-2000s, and our graduation rate has vastly improved, and we're at 96.3 for our 4-year at this time. And then a metric they give is the graduation rate for 5 years. So if a student didn't make it in 4, were we able to get them back? Were we able to help them complete their requirements for graduation? As was pointed, as with the district, also at the high school level, our growth in mathematics, even though our proficiency is not where we would like it, you can see that a couple slots down, our growth is actually above state average. So even though we're not necessarily at proficiency, or at state average with proficiency, our growth overall is good, or at least better than average. You can see the same metric for growth in English language arts, as well as percent proficient in English language arts. When you look at post-secondary readiness index composite, that's an interesting score, and it's a combination of a multitude of things. This is where you get into ACT participation, ACT success, college level coursework, as well as CTE concentrators. And what a CTE concentrator is, CTE stands for Career and Technical Education. So that's like our metals courses, business courses, ag, etc. And in order to be considered a completer, you take at least 2 courses within a department's program of study. And the state average for that is at 63.56. We're at 79. So actually within that score, one of our sub scores, that's one thing we're very pleased with, the fact that we have such a high percentage of our students who are considered CTE completers. Right now with college level schoolwork, we're at 70 as compared to the state average, which is 78. ACT success, we're at 40.48 compared to a state average of 45. And then our participation is at 42, whereas the state average is 62.99. So I would also point out, when we look at our ACT participation being fairly low, this coming Wednesday on the 9th, all of our juniors, or I should say the vast majority of our juniors, are actually taking the ACT at school during the school day. There's two things that we know are really important for our students to gain access to any type of post-secondary education, and that is completing FAFSA, which we've worked hard to improve those percentages, as well as some type of college entrance exam, whether that's ACT, AccuPlacer, and there are others as well that they can take. We presented to the students about the ACT and tried to explain to them that ACT is not just about going to a four-year college or university. The knowledge and skills that are measured by the ACT are important for anything that we do post-secondary, whether that's a trade, an apprenticeship, community college, military. The knowledge and skills necessary to be successful on the ACT are also crossover skills to all of those areas. I would also add that our freshmen took the pre-ACT 8-9 and our sophomores took the pre-ACT, and we're hoping to really leverage those results over the years to understand how our curriculum aligns to that content, as well as help students plan their coursework and also better understand what their strengths are and where their opportunities for growth are. Kevin, you look like you had a question.
This cost, who's bearing the cost of those costs?
Right now, we're paying this out of ESSER funds, but
Okay.
you can choose to spend your money on some things versus others. I know that we are, we're not using STAR testing anymore, and we're able to channel some of those funds. We did pick up a different program as well. But over the next 2 years, it's ESSER. It's something that we're going to plan to sustain because I believe that it's important for the future of our students, and it's a very useful tool. By doing the pre-ACT, the ACT, and the fact that our free and reduced levels are as high as they are, and we're also a Gear Up school, we get cost breaks at every level as well. So,
I think it's a creative use of ESSER funds for now.
yeah.
But like Matt said, we used to pay for STAR, which was it's pretty much a wash, so.
Yeah,
We don't use STAR anymore, which is a hunk of money.
that was a big chunk district-wide.
It's one way to get kids to take the ACT and think about things.
Yeah, and it's promoted a ton of really good conversations with our students because, it's like, my throat's dry, I'm sorry, I should have brought some water.
Yeah.
But so many of our students not even understanding what the ACT is, not hearing about it. So it's been interesting. I think it's been a real positive for our students. Yeah.
Recently, you're really emphasizing ACT, and I get the feeling the colleges are de-emphasizing that, they're not going to require it anymore.
Well, here's one of the reasons I would tell you the dichotomy is one of the big barriers to individuals gaining access to college are college entrance exams such as the ACT. Now, of course, with COVID, there are all these issues with actually being able to gain access to the test, but thank you so much. It's actually an issue of equity, and there's a lot of, we could spend a lot of time discussing, who is more likely to do well on an ACT versus another person based on, where they live or a variety of other factors. So, some biases that might exist within standardized testing. So with all of those, yes, the region institutions and other schools have kind of dropped that ACT requirement. That doesn't mean it's not important because they still measure the skills that are required to be successful that first year in college. As well as when it comes to institutional aid and scholarships, a lot of those are still saying, hey, we need your ACT score. So, and it needs to be a good one too if you're looking for that big scholarship. So it's still important. It has helped people gain access to post-secondary that might not have been able to before because they waived that requirement. So I did want to give you a deeper dive on that post-secondary readiness index. It's a composite of a number of different things. We also like diving in, if you have time, looking at the additional metrics on the school performance profile, like chronic absenteeism. We know absenteeism is a huge issue in our society. It's a big issue in our schools as well, and it's a focus in all of our buildings to address chronic absenteeism. Again, compared with people around our area, it's something that we all struggle with, some more than others, but as far as we sit in our area, conference-wise, 5 out of 7 went down in terms of they experienced more chronic absenteeism. We experienced less, so that was a positive, I think, at the high school level. The last thing, and then I know I'm talking too much, I'll pass the baton to Karen, but one that really sticks out to me is there's another metric for post-secondary enrollment. And the measure is a year after one of our students graduate from high school, how likely are they to be enrolled in some type of post-secondary education? And I'm sorry to say that we're pretty low. We're the lowest in the conference. We're sitting below 50% of our graduates at 47.13. So that's one of the reasons that we feel strongly and really push, fill out your financial aid. Most of our families, a high percentage of our families, when that's done, their estimated family contribution is 0, which means basically school's going to be paid for. But it's a matter of getting them in and getting them to do it. It's not an easy process. Thankfully, we have resources to help them. Not only that, but really helping students understand the benefit of senior year plus and the fact that they can take college level coursework for free when they're in high school. We have career academies where students can graduate with a construction diploma, industrial maintenance diploma, and they're able to finish a 2-year degree in those areas in most times less than a year when they leave, thereby creating a situation where they're more likely to go on and get that further training. And then if you are looking at going to some type of 4-year, then you have a major savings in terms of heading into life after high school. So,
Do you have any correlation of the families that do the FAFSA and get their EFC at 0, that they make a decision to all of a sudden try to go to college where they maybe never would have tried?
I do not have that number. Not that I don't have it with me, but I just don't have that metric. But that's one thing that we are doing is really promoting enroll. We will help you enroll. Where do you want to go? Sit down. We'll get you, and we'll sit down with you, show you exactly how to do it.
Because I think there's probably a lot of families that say, we just can't go to afford college, and they don't even pursue it. So by what you're doing is taking the test, the ACT, and doing the FAFSA, you're showing them that there is potentially a path to be able to have a formal college.
I would say historically, we've had about 35% of our students complete FAFSA, if you look over the years. Last year, we had 71%, which was a huge increase. Right now, we're sitting at, I think, I checked today, we're at about 42%. And as you saw in my board report, we're trying to start earlier now, like with our junior night, explaining to families, this is the steps to post-secondary education to be career and college ready. So.
It's interesting. So maybe over time there would be a correlation by the longer you do this, and if you see the post-secondary numbers going up, that's probably about the only way you're to be able to correlate it.
Yeah, especially that post-secondary enrollment, which is another metric.
Interesting. Thank you. Good one.
Thank you.
I think he probably explained all of it.
Sorry.
So this past year, at Howard Middle School, we did get acceptable. We have been in many different places, of course. Comprehensively, we met the goal. We are still considered targeted. So in 2017-18 year, we were considered targeted with different areas. This past year, we're targeted with students with disabilities, students with IEPs.
still, and so we're still getting support for that. Those are the things that the team at Howard are putting together so that we can try to reach all students, whether they have disabilities or not disabilities, but we have different pieces in place right now. We have our Power Hour, which is looking at how do we reach all students for interventions and enrichment during that time. We also have instituted with our ESSER dollars this year, Power Up, which is before school and after school assistance, and just another layer of support. I would have to say that once we get into some of the comparison, you'll see our teachers weren't thrilled because our score did go down. And I would venture to say, had we had the 2020 scores in there, it would be a little bit different than what we're looking at now. We're really not looking at apples to apples, it's apples and oranges, because we have different students with different experiences. So back in 2018, that's where our overall performance said needs improvement. So we put a lot of different things in place. In fact, we changed from a junior high to a middle school in that year. We restructured so that we were focusing on students and ensuring that we were putting the right things in. The next year, in 2019, we went from needs improvement to commendable. So in that year, we met our comprehensive status. We were targeted in 2018 in two areas, low socioeconomic status as well as our students with IEP. So we got off of part of that list in the following year and have kept off of that list with low SES. And those are free and reduced students that are able to make the gains. Obviously, we have that gap year in there between 2019 and 2021. So we have a whole bunch of new students as well, but our scores did go down. And there were a lot of disruptions last year. There were a lot of disruptions. So I'm just going to say it out loud that our students did feel it. Now, that being said, the way that they have figured this is a little bit different. They used to put a lot of weight on growth, but they didn't have the growth from 2020 to 2021, so they put more weight on proficiency than they did on growth. So again, these scores are not necessarily apples to apples, but they're important to look at, and our staff has delved into this and gone pretty deep. When you look at, we're digging down, and this is just this past year, 2021, you can see our participation. We had 100% participation, and that included all of our students who were remote learning last year. So we were able to get to every student who participated in the testing. And then as we kind of go down into this, you can see that our average school mathematics and English language arts, we were just below the state level. The other thing is, it looks different from my screen to up there, sorry. Conditions for learning, and Matt talked a lot about conditions in learning, and that's the climate and culture. And some of the questions are, if you've ever taken a test and they've said, in the last 30 days, have you felt unsafe at school? That might be an example. And when you're a sixth grader and you're reading that question, you might think in the last 2 months or, this school year. So some of the questions are a little bit complicated. The reality is last year there was a lot of disruptions. And so I am hopeful that this year, having school every day, having different things in place, that our conditions for learning will look different. One thing that Matt touched on is when you drill down into those areas and you see what is involved in the conditions for learning. So when you look at the different areas, adult-student relationships, emotional safety, expectations, boundaries, physical safety, and student-to-student relationships. We do pretty well on most of that. The emotional safety was a little tough last year. And so students rated the culture or the climate of the building a little bit lower on that. So that all played into it. Now, it could be that there are 7 questions on adult-student relationships, and one of the questions, one student decided that they didn't understand it, or they reported negatively on that one. It skews the entire area for that. So like I said, it is complex in how you look at it. So when we look at the data, we actually go in and look at the questions and what were the percentages, so that we can actually see where are we falling, where are we stubbing our toe, or where do we need to improve to make sure that we're providing what students need. And then as we go down, we look at the growth for English language arts, math, and our proficiency. We're not where we wanted them to be, so we put a lot of emphasis on that. We had students who were out of school from May 13th until August of 2020, and then we had some disruptions. So I say that just as a reminder that I believe that kind of played into it. Did it play into it for every single district? No. But we definitely, when we look at attendance, we definitely had a lot of students that were out, whether it was because of illness, whether it was because of they were remote learning. I'm unsure of all of that, but we had a lot of disruptions that played into that. So, that was like you. So, do you have any questions for me on Howard?
Kind of peppered Ron in that to get an understanding of all of this, so you're.
I didn't see where you guys are pushing at here, guys, to go to the next page.
Down here.
You can even click this or something. Okay. It's good to follow good people, so I'm kind of the tail end of this. As you can see there, the same thing for Lakeview. We were acceptable, and I'd like to say that's all well and good, but I'm a competitor, and it drove me crazy that we were 1.23 away from commendable. But I would just say that because I don't think this is what drives our work. It is, it's certainly like that target that we shoot for. But there are some other factors about our work in our building that I really want to take a few minutes and just tell you about. I think it's the most important thing when we talk about knowing our community and knowing our who we serve. And I cannot say this enough, and I don't say it enough. I do know that. There were 3 factors on our conditions of learning that seriously would bring tears to my eyes, and that was when our students talked about how they felt student-to-student safety. We were over the state level. You know, in a world where we turn on and we see about bullying, we hear about bullying, you know, social media is full of it. Even kids' cartoons has a lot of sarcasm and, you know, just the attacks, the verbal attacks and that. To think that the staff in our building are creating an environment that is allowing kids to feel safe that's over the state average, that means the world to me. Does that mean that every child would report that? No. Do we have work to do? Yep. But that's still really, really strong. Another thing I think that was really powerful was our kids talked about feeling safe physically in our school. Again, kind of the things that you don't always talk about, but that I think kids do see and parents do hear the stories now and then. There were a number of times last year that I called the Law Center for support because some of our children have really tough situations. And I just believe that after some point in time, when you can't de-escalate a situation, that we sometimes need people who are better prepared and in a better situation to be able to help us. And we need to get parents involved in that. So for some of the things that our kids saw and heard in classrooms and hallways, in the office, that really meant a lot to me, that they have a lot of confidence in their staff that are handling it. So I really think that goes back to crediting the staff. And this is the all-in for what it speaks about the adults. And when I say staff, I do mean teachers, but I also mean the lunch ladies, the custodians, the associates, the office people. We far exceeded the state average when our kids' data question with regard to how they felt with the adults in the building, the connectedness, it far exceeded the state average. And again, I just think that's a stronghold that everybody in that work is in that work for kids first. And it's frustrating because I know this is all about student achievement, and I want our kids to be as ready to go as anybody. Matt and I and Karen and Rhonda and Julie or Tom are always talking about, are we getting our kids there? You know, we talk about the number of kids in each academic setting. We talk about the number of kids who are dropping out or who are virtual, or I feel like our responsibility in the pre-K 5 is to give those kids a strong foundation that they can take the next step and be ready for. So, you know, we're missing that mark a little bit by the state average, but I come back to just what everybody else said. You know, our kids have been through a lot in the last 3 years. That's okay. I don't think they're victims. I think they're survivors. I think they're winners. I think we're on the way. We're targeted again for the area of students with disabilities. And I just would remind you that students with IEPs can go from speech to hearing to a little bit of behavior support to a full-fledged one-on-one behavior supporter to a reading goal to a math goal to a Strat 2 student. And so, you know, in our building, we have over 70 students identified that way. That's our responsibility to make sure we're serving those kids too. So when we look at that data, we took that and we said, what do we need to do to focus on that targeted group first? And so, you know, we always talk about that, where your money and your time go your priority. So we really built the schedule with the focus of what do our special ed students need? What do we need to do there? And we talked about making sure that they're getting their core, they're in a classroom with their peers for the grade level instruction they need, and then they're going to the special ed classroom to get the support they need in addition to what all their peers got in the classroom. And so this year we used our ESSER money and we purchased some professional development time and some new programming that really we believe is going to help our friends above us as well. And that is the curriculum that's aligned to the Wilson work. We worked with a gal that actually owns a private company in Pella, and she came and trained our staff. It talks about that it really helps kids understand the code of the language to help our kids become better readers. When you walk in our building today, you often see kids clapping out their parts of speech. Today, I was in a second grade room and Mrs. Lancaster was asking the kids, is that an open or a closed vowel? Every kid in the room knew the answer. They're drawing lines and they're circling front words or beginnings of the word and endings of the word. The kids are understanding more and more how words are put together. And if we can continue to develop that, we know that we're going to teach kids a stronger sense of reading, and that's going to serve them well. When you know how to read, that just opens the doors. So I feel like this data has pushed us to say, what can we do with our most students who need the most need first, and then just like the other people said, work that down. I am so proud of the work that Taylor Wusso has done, and you probably don't know Taylor very well. She's a remote teacher for us in TAG. We have students for the first time in our building at multiple grade levels going a class above. We have a young man who leaves Lakeview 3 times a day because Tim Castor has made a way to make sure, and he goes to Howard and attends 3 courses in reading, math, and TAG at a higher level. A little guy leaves a 3rd grade classroom and goes to a 4th grade math classroom, a couple other kids. And so the work really the numbers have really made us look out there and say, what does every child need and how can we best provide it? So it's not just that we're looking at the one end, but the other thing I shared there with you is the same thing the others did. You can see in 2018, we were right there at 54.79. 2019, we bumped up to that commendable. And then we had 2020 where we were all virtual and not testing and came back last year. Interesting enough, I'm probably old enough that I thought it would be better for the kids to stay with pencil and paper in 2019 when we started these tests. I'm telling you why, I might have been the only one in the building who thought that, because last year we went to Chromebooks and we bought them all, earbuds, and We went through all this spiel, and I'm telling you, those kids were rocking it. Where I was worried about all these things, they were good. I mean, the only people who were worried about that was anybody 50 and over, because those kids were fine. They didn't think twice about it. Click, click, here we are, go. So we'll continue that practice this year. Our teachers have done an amazing job just teaching our kids to make that yet another tool in their toolbox. And I have to tell you about a little guy who has a vision diagnosis that warrants him needing some extra assistance. He is a guy that Julie and I, when children have trouble with their Chromebooks, I'll say, take this down in Miss Trower's room and have so-and-so help you in there. And this little guy has learned how to make his Chromebook magnify, he's learned how to change colors, he's learned how to do all these things. And it's amazing. And he's helped us with 2 or 3 kids. And I always say to Miss Trower, if I'm driving you crazy, and she said, it's so good for the kids to see the adults need a child to teach them. She's like, what a powerful lesson. So all those things just show that it's not just testing, it really has become a tool in the work. Just like everyone else, our participation in the testing is really, really important. Cameron was a godsend last year. I was worried about everything technology, and Cameron was like, call me, I can help you. Kim Kaler was the assistant that helped in our building manage this. It was amazing. We had kids do it virtually where we watched them on a Chromebook while they took the test on a Chromebook, and I sat at a table to watch them on a Chromebook. And it was an amazing experience. These are elementary children, and they would say things like, thank you, Mrs. Scoville, have a good day. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow's a math day. I mean, the skills of our kids is just, it really has been an eye-opening experience, but great participation there. As you can see, we exceeded that and got everyone in. I'm right there with everyone else, disappointed that our mathematics achievement isn't at that state level. But I'll tell you what, I think that we have done the right work as a district. Again, Karen and Matt are working on the IM math. They're a couple years in advance of us. You might remember last year we piloted it, and then you bought that for us. Again, our teachers are managing 2 brand new curriculums, and it didn't take very long this fall, did it, Julie? And our teachers were saying to us, our kids are gonna do better. We can already see how much more writing there is in our curriculum. Our kids are going back and they're looking at the evidence to find and support their answers. So we really believe that we made good curricular purchase decisions, and we're going to see the benefit of that. I don't know if it'll be this year or if it'll be next, but I would tell you again, I look forward to the data catching up, because I really do believe that with our instructional coaches, our Joe Mobley, who's worked with our new staff, and the work our teachers are doing, I really don't think that you could ask much more from teachers in the state of Iowa than what our teachers in our building and our district are giving our kids. And I think our kids are showing us that they're absorbing it and excited by it.
There's some interesting comments about technology.
Oh, it is, because it's like I said, sometimes I'm like the one going, oh, just shoom.
You know, the world is quickly moving technology, and those of us who didn't go to school with technology probably need to be a little more open to it.
Well,
lots I could say, and I'll just leave it at that.
but you know what, there was a day in our district where we didn't have access to that technology for all kids, and we didn't have people who supported us like Cameron and Mecca do. And I gotta tell you, I don't know if any administrators ever said I called Cameron or Mecca and they didn't get right back to me. So really, we are in a sweet spot right now from where we've been. And Tom was part of that when he came, all of us going, the elementary's got this, but the middle school and high school don't. I mean, you heard us say that, that they didn't have as good a technology above us as we had, and we were like, there's a problem when a junior doesn't have that access that a 3rd grader does. So you've all made a way for that for us, and so we're appreciative of that district-wide, I would say.
Thank you, folks, appreciate that. A lot of very, very good comments. Just very, very pleased with the advocacy that we have from teachers in creating a culture in the district where people work together and get along and strategize that's a really good feeling, and I know a lot of our parents appreciate that. A lot of our teachers do, coming together. We've made some real advancements in technology, and that's attributed to the board, understanding that it's really, really important. So, good work by a lot of teachers, and support staff has been remarkable in many occasions in how they've stepped forward, especially in our COVID years. So the collegiality and the red together that we've had in the district is pretty profound on most days, and I know a lot of people are very, very proud of that and appreciate that. So good work, thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add that I think 2.5 years ago, first getting on the board, there was discussions about going paperless with the board packets. And there was 3 or 4, 5, 6 meetings that we had before COVID hit, and there was some around the board table like, I still like paper. And then COVID hit, and it all started coming virtually, and I usually have a laptop here, and I just print a few pages out anymore just to manage the meeting in here. Brooke's on her phone, and most people have kind of adopted into, so I think, part of the board is seeing a shift in how we're doing things in receiving board packets, and I think that's a good direction. But yeah, technology, I'll just say this about technology. We're more than halfway to the Jetsons age. Okay? The Jetsons came out, if you didn't know, in 1966. It was set in the year 2066. So in 2016, we're halfway to the Jetsons age. Now, this all has to do with some stuff I learned in another area, but when I was resisting technology and somebody told me that, I had to stop and think. And if you look at what was all in the Jetsons, technology-wise with robots and talking to people on TVs, and all those things that are happening, so much of the technology that was predicted in the future from 1966, we're seeing it now. And so, to invest in our youth who are growing up in natural this technology is something that, we really need to embrace and move forward with. So, to the staff, thank you. It feels good to focus on student achievement for a while. So many times we're in here in the boardroom and we're talking about bonds and this issue and personnel issues and this and budget, which we're going to get to in a minute. But a lot of the board work should be focused on what we're all here for, and that's student achievement. So thank you for taking the time to report out to us on all of that.
Kevin, I just want to piggyback on another comment on the technology that I've struggled with too at times. And I think when we went through COVID and we had to pull the troops together to see how we stayed connected to all of our kids so that they could continue to learn during that period. And I'm willing to listen to, but I know my team feels very strongly that with technology being as powerful as it is, you still can't beat the relationships that you don't get in technology with teachers and kids. The relationship building, and you do that by being in the same room together, looking each other in the eye, communicating, and get the feel for where things are. That's the way you do that in creating relationships, not only with the kids, but with their parents. So that's another important piece of it. I think we even had reinforced with this when we went through the COVID era. And so I just wanted to make sure that we reinforce that. I don't know how that will ever go away in terms of powerful, positive relationships with kids, teachers, and administrators, and our moms and dads and community. So just want to reinforce that.
Yeah, so thanks for all the work happening in all the buildings. Any comments from the board on anything that we've heard?
I have a question. How often does that report come out? It comes from the state?
Once a year.
And is it not, I remember it coming out, it's been a few months since it came out, hasn't it?
It was a little delayed this year.
Was it?
Yeah.
So next year, are we looking at, will the next school year be started by the time we see next year's problem?
It would be great if we saw it earlier, but I think because it's electronic, they have dealt with their own staffing issues and going through some of that process. So.
I think it was in November this year that we got it, mid-November, which was really late.
They usually shoot for January to release it to like us and then the public. Usually what they make sure The actual test scores, when the kids get done taking the assessments, we can get the immediate now that we take it online.
Some of them.
Yeah.
So,
And, but there's some reports that they have to wait to put together all the data.
Like conditions of learning, we don't even take until April
Yeah.
every year.
So to get the performance profile with all that figured together doesn't come out as soon as you actually get the actual test score.
But if there's only some way they could use technology to do it in summer, so you have to bring in the school year.
and then like even things like the ACT, I mean, kids are taking the ACT in June and July.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my point, with technology, you gotta have it early in the school year so you can actually have time to do something with it,
Yeah.
right?
It'd be great.
All right, well, thank you. Anybody else, anything on the student achievement? All right. It's up to you with numbers.
These are just preliminary discussions. I'll just go over the timeline first. We'll have our, the action by the board, and the date of the public hearing for the budget is April 11th at 6:30. We'll have another discussion at the March meeting, and then publish our tax rate information and budget information sometime between March 22nd and April 1st. It's due to the Department of Management and County Auditor by April 15th. So like I said, we'll have another review with numbers in front of you at the regular March meeting. Supplemental state aid has been officially set at 2.5%. So with the budget guarantee, like we told you the last time, that's new money of $98,130. FY '23 regular program district cost per pupil is $7,437. Valuations set by the Department of Management, I think are above the norm. So I've been talking with Matt Gillespie. He thinks that they have increased a lot. He thinks it's normal, but I'm still gonna talk with the assessor's office to get an explanation of why they're higher than the increase from last year, so,
So you're talking the average valuation house is gonna go up.
yeah. The increase from last year was 2%, and this year it's well above that.
You know what the housing market's done, so everybody's housing assessment's gonna go. What it should make is the real dollars are gonna stay the same, but the tax levy rate should go down.
Yeah, but I just wanna make for sure
Yeah,
about that. so.
yeah, whatever the house is assessed at and the dollar value is gonna change the levy rate, the real dollars don't change. It's just the rate.
We are no longer able to do a cash reserve levy, so that won't affect our tax rate. Still working on the resources and requirements, put in front of you at the March meeting, still some unknowns. We're gonna be doing a pre-levy resolution at next month's regular meeting for the remainder of the general obligation bonds, the 2 million. So then that, the way Matt Gillespie had it scheduled, that brings us to the 270 levy rate. And then I was hoping to have discussions with the finance committee about the management levy and what our thoughts are on that moving forward.
We'll have that at the March 12th, well, the finance committee meeting,
Yeah.
March 12th.
March 14th.
March 14th, sorry. Yes.
So we'll have a better understanding of what the tax rate will be set at once we talk about the management levy, and the Department of Management still has to input some of their information, like the state income tax paid. That's usually in the beginning of March, so, but we're plugging along and things look good to me, so.
Okay. Yeah, the SSA being 2.5 is a little surprising, was that, actually keep that. I think you were thinking, what, 2.3?
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be 2.2, 2.5, but of course the difference between that is,
But not a lot of money.
no.
Does anybody have any questions for me until March?
I'm just concerned that we had agreed the tax rate was gonna be 1873 there. I would hope we can get it back. I just think we gotta raise that if we can, but with that cash levy, is that gonna make it hard to do, or do you wanna speculate?
I don't wanna speculate. To increase your tax rate, there's only a few things that you can do, so, I like to keep it steady.
I think we should make decisions based on that. Also on our projections for when we did our bonding.
We should come in well below 1873.
Yeah.
Look, can we make it on that?
It's gonna be lower than that,
Yeah.
because right now it's at, what, 16 something?
Depending on what we do with management.
Yeah, yeah, it's in the 16s. So part of what goes, that's what I said earlier, that when you have real dollars, and the dollars don't change, if housing values go up, the percentage of the tax levy rate is gonna go down, but the dollars don't change. So, because of the inflation of the housing market across the country, home values are getting higher and higher and higher, and so the percent that's levied against that is just gonna get lower and lower. So it's one of those things that it actually makes it look like the tax rates are going down, but the real dollars are staying the same because the valuation is going higher.
We were at 17.6 something, I have to look, last year.
Yeah,
So we're not at the 1873 yet.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's really, what is the real dollars that they're paying on their homes from year to year? That is probably the most important number, but sometimes we look at levy rates a little bit out of the filter.
I'm looking at having enough money to build the high school. I think we gotta be concerned about that, that's gonna be
Right.
way too tight.
But we can't just go levy for money to spend without spending authority. It's all gonna have to come from
No,
debt
I
service.
understand all that.
I mean, just because we can levy for money doesn't mean that we can spend it. Does that make sense?
A thing we need to think about, at some point, we're gonna have to probably get rid of our mascot. And I know we're in a holding pattern now, and we don't intend to do anything. But talking today to Rich Parker, if we had to change our mascot, that's a $500,000 expense. Where are you gonna get that money? Finance committee can tell me at the next meeting, I guess, but I knew it was a big expense, I had no idea how much, but at some point, well, I'll tell you with that mascot thing, we're in a holding pattern, but when I read in the paper that the American Civil Liberties Union is supporting the Indians in that movement, we're gonna lose. It's just a question of what year we lose. But you gotta have that in your head and think about that cost. Because that's a big number, I think, for an old guy, you know.
I guess we'll.
And I don't think we've ever talked about that at this board at all, but it's gonna happen. It's a reality.
Okay, anything else on the schedule coming up on what the work we're gonna be doing on the budget? All right, anything else going around the board? Anything, Brooke? Tim? I don't know if Mike's on there or not. I'll come back. Chris, you have anything? Bob?
Did you have any questions on the administrative reports that they submitted in your packet? They're all in there.
No, I wrote some things down, but they covered most of those things in the discussion, so.
I do have something.
I want to bring up one really quick comment. A couple months ago, we had Owen Bile come in, who is a National Merit semifinalist. He's been selected as a National Merit finalist now.
Really?
So that's a very big deal. I want to make sure.
Thank you. I've been learning that, but I don't want to pressure them, so.
You go ahead, then I got some.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. How much was that grant, the Belief grant?
It's for 10,000.
Oh, you got the high amount, okay.
Yeah, and when we submitted the grant, we had to submit what we were gonna use it for, which covered subs staying overnight, because the school that they have selected as the model is in Council Bluffs, I believe. So we'd go spend a day there learning, their structure, and then come back, and we're hoping that there's another grant after this one to help maybe utilize, what we've learned. But yeah, no, we got $10,000.
Okay, on the virtual school, how did we get 5 new students? How did they move around they moved to our community or?
Magda can answer that, she's on here, I think.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say at the high school, I know we've had some students move in.
Can you ask that question one more time, please, Bob?
Ask again, she
Oh,
said.
you've added 5 new students to the virtual academy, and did they move into our district? Or were they in our system, and I didn't think they could move around after the year started, that was throwing me off.
So at this time, we cannot offer open enrollment, and so yes, correct, they are in our district already. Sometimes we have situations with health issues, and
Okay,
other things that are, warrant the need to allow them to be virtual.
I know we had a student move in from California that it worked for them to do that.
okay. I also want to comment on that citizenship curriculum that you disappeared down here, I guess. It just seems we've done something wrong with social studies. I got thinking the other day when I came here and used some of the materials of the guy before me, every unit, he had 5 things and kids had to say, is that a fact or opinion? And I thought, well, that's dumb. Everybody knows what a fact and an opinion is. But now I'm dumb because I should have taught more of that because there are people who do not know that difference. And this things where people can't talk to one another, that's a sick society that I think we help cause, maybe by not talking about some of these citizenship issues. Anyway, thanks for doing that.
I'm going to give a quick overview on a pretty significant project that came out of the legislature this year. So I'll respond to any questions you have, and so can Lisa and Rhonda, because we've been working on this together. It's called their teacher retention payments that's coming out of the state legislature. And the rules it took a while from it being passed and to being handed over to the Department of Education, where they made rules for the teacher retention payments. And basically the legislators, in its simplest form, said, we're going to give all teachers that qualify $1,000. That's going to happen. And the criteria for that is they have to have a valid license, 1, they have to be full-time, 2, and they have to be an in-person classroom teacher. We viewed 2 Zoom meetings with the Department of Ed here in the last 7 days. And so that's going to happen. There's work that Lisa is engaged in right now in determining who in our district of that category, licensed full-time in the classroom teacher, is going to receive it.
Are you saying that if we have certified teachers who are doing things that not in the classroom full-time, they're not eligible?
You're gonna have these.
Let me finish.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Let me finish. What staff are considered classroom teachers?
All right.
Grade level teachers, content area teachers, title teachers, English learner teachers, special ed teachers, physical education teachers, music teachers, and art teachers. And I'll make this clear to you because I'm giving you the overview tonight. Not all people that are engaged with kids are eligible for this. And there's really nothing in terms of the law that the district can do, because the state of Iowa, the Department of Ed, has made the rules that it goes to just a certain group of people. There will be, as we can tell right now, possibly a pool of 5 to 7 individuals that would not fall under this category. This is just for teachers. Now, I'm attending a superintendent's meeting on Wednesday. This will be the topic of the day. There's some issues with this, and it's already been presented. Well, why isn't a guidance counselor? But they're not. And there's nothing that I've heard that's gonna change that. They're just certain groups that are, it's a small group, but there are guidance counselors that are not. We have our coaches that are not eligible for that.
Nurses.
Nurses aren't eligible for that. Administrators that are not eligible for that. So it's got some negative connotations to it, but that's the way it's gonna work. So then, what could potentially surface is, are there other people in the school district that have contributed to the COVID crisis? And this came kind of out of, I think this is being funded at the state level by ESSER dollars, COVID dollars. So the question that we will be presented with some folks is, why aren't I part of this, and where's my fair share of contributing to my work? So I'm not trying to create controversy. What I'm trying to say is, this is a state mandated Department of Education initiative, $1,000. They made the rules, and we will follow the rules, and maybe that will be it. But a lot of districts are considering other pools of employees, or all of their other employees, in terms of what can districts do for them. I'm just alerting you to that conversation. I'll probably bring something back to you on March 14th that would be what we think administratively is the right thing to do, but we always have to be able to fund things. So I can attempt to answer, but I'd prefer not to go into too much in the weeds tonight, because there's still things that have to be discovered.
Interesting.
It's very interesting. It's caused a high degree of conversation throughout Iowa. So.
And I'm getting emails that give you the governor's number to call up and complain about it. I think the ISEA is trying to fight it. You're talking like it's already settled, and they're.
It is.
And they're kind of creating a battle, I think, really.
It's a done deal. Now, it's a done deal as far as we know. Can legislators go back and do something additional if there was enough concern or pressure? I suppose they could, but I'm giving you what we know as this afternoon at 3 o'clock, after we had our Zoom meeting with Ann Lebo, the Director of Education. She had 3 people on there. There was a whole flurry of questions, and
So did the law make these categories specific, or was the DE make these categories specific?
It's the law. The legislator passed the law.
they passed the law.
The DE's interpreting it for us.
Which therefore, when they interpret, they create guidelines and formats for making it happen.
They put out a list of what they know as far as what they have on record from our beds report. And then we have to go through and make sure it's correct.
So somewhere in the law, it says that you gotta be an in-classroom full-time teacher.
Yes. Okay, that's all right.
From October 1st, did you say it already, Tom?
Yeah.
October to the end of
So
the
it's the
year.
law that's guiding the DE, not the DE just making their own
No,
interpretation.
the law was the catalyst for giving $1,000 to teachers in the name of retention. So then the Department of Ed has to create the guidelines for implementation.
Understand, yeah.
So that's all I have tonight.
Okay. I don't have anything else since we've already gone on the table. Without objection, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Oh, thank you. Christine, motion second to adjourn, all in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Aye. All opposed? All right, thanks for your time.